St. Louis dance to this song, but I'm not going to even try it. Good evening, and thank you, Sonia, for that very warm introduction. And I can tell you, I absolutely hate following CEO Thurman. His energy is so much higher than mine. But it's my honor to welcome you all to Atlanta, the cradle of the civil rights movement and home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman John Lewis, Ambassador Andrew Young, Dr. Joseph Lowry, and so many other men and women who made it possible for us to gather together in this room this evening. Thank you to Chair Tom Perez and the Democratic Party of Georgia Chair Senator Nikema Williams and the DNC leadership for continuing the fight on behalf of our communities. As I was preparing my remarks for this evening, I was reminded of the poem Black Genius by Sonia Sanchez. She so eloquently penned these words: "This is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of LaTanya, Kadisha, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille. Too often as African Americans, and especially as African American women, as we work tirelessly to effectuate change in our communities, the small voice we hear is the one that we allow to whisper to ourselves. Am I good enough? Do I have enough? Do I belong here? What will happen if I fail?" When I dared to make the choice to become the mayor of Atlanta, I had to reckon with each of these questions. Because you see, I wore the shame of my father's incarceration on my chest, like an armor made of Valerian steel. For those of you who watch Game of Thrones. And I wore it to guard me from the disappointment I had come to expect from life itself. I didn't come from a family of formally educated people, but their education was from the cotton fields of Mississippi, the streets of the west side of Atlanta, the housing projects of Chicago. And there were times when my inner voice made me question if I was worthy because they said it wasn't my turn. Mayors had a certain pedigree, a lineage, but my mother stood for 16 hours a day, shampooing and curling people's hair. So if you ever see my hair not looking good, I ought to be ashamed of myself. I can do some hair in my sleep. My grandfather went through the back doors of hotels downtown, hauling trash and paper from buildings. He called it Uptown. Who was I to think that I was worthy to be the mayor of this city? But what I reminded myself was that one man's garbage was my grandfather's gold. And my mother stood on her feet so that I could have a seat at tables like this. And then I reminded myself that I am the hope of the slave. Just a few blocks from City Hall looms a 450,000 square foot building whose history of incarceration will soon be eclipsed by its future as a symbol of our community. Last week I stood on the steps of that building, the Atlanta Detention Center, and I signed legislation to close its doors as a center of mass incarceration and to open them one day soon as a center of hope and equity. Our jail had a declining number of inmates due in large part to our eliminating cash bail bonds in the city of Atlanta within my first month as mayor. And our numbers continue to decline when I signed an executive order last year stopping our receiving ICE detainees because we would not be complicit. Some might say that in Atlanta we are being soft on crime, but the reality is last year our crime numbers went down. Because what I believe is that in large part we are saying to our forgotten communities, and they are feeling it and we are seeing it, that we are giving people tools, the power to succeed. And we're making sure that poverty is not a death sentence and that making a mistake is not an unforgivable sin. Because what I learned at 8 years old when my father went to prison was sometimes simply good people make bad decisions. Each election cycle, we stress the same mantra: every vote matters. I stand here as the 60th mayor of Atlanta as a testament to that reality. In a runoff election with nearly 100,000 votes cast, we won with just a margin of 832 votes. In Atlanta, we had a decision to make. We were at a fork in the road. The path that we chose on our last election day has ensured that inmates in our city jail charged with petty offenses will no longer languish in despair, but will now have the tools to thrive and succeed in our communities. We chose a path that allowed us to reject a barbaric and inhumane policy that tore families apart before our very eyes. We eliminated cash bail bonds in Atlanta because no one deserves to languish in prison simply because they are too poor to get out. Because we recognize that every vote counts and elections matter. For the first time ever, we funded HIV and AIDS funding in our city budget. And we now have 2 nurses in our neighborhoods administering PrEP to our most vulnerable communities. Because every vote counts and elections matter, we established the first ever Mayor's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, known as One Atlanta, and appointed our first full-time LGBTQ affairs coordinator. I share this with you because 832 votes made the difference in the city of Atlanta. We were on the verge of undoing the progress that men like Ambassador Andrew Young and Maynard Jackson worked so hard to put into our communities. So again, I'm reminded of the words of Sonia Sanchez. This is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of Latanya, Kadisha, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille. And in this room, it's the voice of Tom, it's the voice of Seema, it's the voice of Heather, Nakima, Michael, Lucy, Theron, Jamie, Raphael, Cedric. And you can call your name too. This is the voice of, and this is the voice of a mayor named Keisha. When we faced what seemed like insurmountable odds just a year and a half ago in Atlanta, we made it over, and I know that America can too. Our communities, our children, and my children's children are counting on us to get it right. Failure is not an option. We must get this right. So thank you for the work that you are doing. Thank you for those who made it possible for me to stand here, and thank you for the work that you are doing that will make that possibility a reality for people across this country. May God bless you and continue the great work that you're doing on behalf of us all. Thank you.